The cost of free dinners. Jennifer Carter knew exactly how to make an entrance. She knew which lip gloss caught the light just right when she stepped out of her compact sedan in the evening. She knew how to tilt her head when she laughed so that a man felt chosen, not merely amused. She knew how to make a simple black dress look expensive, how to hold eye contact 1 second longer than most women dared, and how to walk into a restaurant as though she had never once in her life worried about the price of anything on the menu. What almost nobody knew was that Jennifer checked her bank account before nearly every date, sometimes in the parking lot, engine running, phone balanced on the steering wheel, sometimes in the bathroom stall at the Amazon delivery station before clocking out, uniform still smelling of cardboard and conveyor belt. Sometimes, while sitting in her driver's seat, hair freshly redone, mascara set, hoping the number on the screen had somehow become less humiliating in the last 20 minutes. It never had. Her life looked better from the outside than it felt from the inside. At 28, she was strikingly beautiful, high cheekbones, warm brown skin that photographed well in any light, and a figure that made strangers do quiet double takes on the street. She was quick-witted enough to hold a conversation in any room and physically tough in a way most people never expected. She could carry oversized packages up 4 flights of apartment stairs in 90-degree heat, drive routes for 10 hours straight on back roads, smile through rude customers who treated her like furniture, and still be showered, dressed, and ready by 7:30 for dinner with a man she had met on an app the night before. She made decent money, not the kind that built comfort, but the kind that almost covered the month. And almost is an exhausting place to live. Rent had risen twice in 3 years. Car repairs came in waves, always clustering together as though mechanical failures conspired. Insurance never cared that she was behind. Her mother needed help now and then with utilities, with groceries, with a phone bill that seemed to creep upward mysteriously every quarter. Her younger brother, Darius, was always in some kind of situation, sometimes minor, occasionally urgent, always presented with a particular brand of helpless shame that made it difficult for Jennifer to say no. Groceries had become an insult. A full cart felt like a luxury purchase. By the time Jennifer paid for what she had to pay for, there was barely enough left over to live the life she believed matched the woman she saw in the mirror. So she built a system. Monday, dinner date, preferably somewhere with a prefix or a menu she had already researched online. Tuesday, drinks and appetizers, which usually became dinner if she played it right. Ordered the shrimp cocktail first, then let the conversation drift toward how hungry she still was. Wednesday, upscale lounge or steakhouse if she could land one, which she usually could. Thursday, something casual but filling, a nice sushi spot, a mid-range Italian place with generous bread service. Friday and Saturday were premium nights, reserved for the men with the best jobs, the cleanest shoes, and the strongest urge to impress. These were the nights she wore the good dress. Sunday, if she was tired and no opportunity presented itself, she stayed home and ate leftovers from takeout boxes stacked in the refrigerator like trophies. At first, she told herself it was temporary, just until she got ahead, just until she paid off the credit card, just until things got easier. But months turned into a year, and the system stopped feeling like survival and started feeling like identity. It stopped being a coping mechanism and started being a personality. The gap between the two is important, and Jennifer crossed it without knowing it. Jennifer became an expert at extracting meals from men while giving away just enough charm to keep the arrangement going for a week or two. She had rules, a whole private code of conduct that she had never written down but never forgotten. Never offer to split the bill. Not even the performative reach for the purse that women sometimes made as a gesture. Never volunteer the gesture. Never suggest a cheaper place if he offers something nice. If he offers a wine bar, accept the wine bar. If he offers the wine bar and it leads to a tasting menu, stay for the tasting menu. Never get too emotionally involved. Emotional involvement was a liability. It made a woman want to give things back, and giving things back was inefficient. If he starts asking where this is going, if he mentions effort, if he uses words like mutual or balance or partnership, then it is time to fade. She faded on a high school teacher from Decatur who had kind eyes and a warm laugh. On a project manager from Midtown who brought her flowers unprompted on their third date. On a physical therapist who had already met her friends and seemed to think that meant something. On 2 police officers, one of whom had started talking about introducing her to his family. On a restaurant owner who offered to cook for her privately, which she accepted twice before losing interest. On a software salesman with a nice apartment in Buckhead who seemed genuinely hurt when she stopped returning his calls. And on one sweet electrician named Marcus, who had driven 40 minutes each way to pick her up and drop her off 3 separate times, who had remembered after an offhand comment that she liked old-fashioned flowers, and who brought tulips on their 4th date. She stopped answering Marcus's texts the moment he gently, laughingly suggested that next time she might pick up dessert. It was not even a real complaint. It was the kind of thing couples say to each other with warmth. But Jennifer heard it as an invoice, and she did not do invoices. That was the thing about Jennifer Carter. She did not think of herself as cruel. She thought of herself as practical. Men had money. Men wanted her attention and the particular glow that came with being seen publicly with a beautiful woman. The exchange, to her, was obvious and fair. If they were disappointed later, that was because they had imagined too much. She had never promised anything she didn't intend to give, but she had given the impression of possibility, and that impression was a kind of promise. She knew this somewhere. She simply chose not to examine it too closely. Still, the pattern always ended the same way. At some point, each man noticed that Jennifer received generously and returned nothing. Not gifts, not thoughtfulness, not effort, not even basic softness. She expected doors opened, meals paid for, rides provided, compliments offered, patience extended. But if a man had a hard day, she became quietly bored. If he wanted consideration, she became irritated. If he hinted that relationships involved 2 people pouring into one another, Jennifer called him needy in her mind and moved on. She was not just guarded, she was entitled. And entitlement, when worn long enough, hardens into character. Her closest friend, a woman named Kezia, who had known her since college and loved her enough to tell the truth at least occasionally, said to her one afternoon over iced coffee, "Girl, you cannot keep treating dating like Uber Eats with conversation. At some point, the restaurant stops delivering." Jennifer laughed it off the way she laughed off everything that cut too close to the center. Another friend, Tamara, who was gentler by nature, said once, "You better be careful, Jen. One day the one you actually want is going to see how you move before you realize he's watching." Jennifer rolled her eyes both times. "The right man," she said, "won't be counting." But wise people were never really talking about money. They were talking about spirit. The inciting crack in the whole arrangement came on an ordinary Thursday in October, though Jennifer did not recognize it as a crack until much later. She had just gotten promoted at Amazon. The raise was not life-changing, 40 cents more an hour on the dispatch side of the operation, but it mattered. She moved into a support role part of the week, which meant slightly better hours, a bit more air conditioning, and the dangerous illusion that she had finally arrived somewhere. She started buying better makeup, graduated from drugstore brands to department store counter visits where women spritzed her wrist with fragrance she could not afford to take home. She upgraded her gym membership to one with steam rooms and towel service. She told herself she was becoming the kind of woman who truly belonged in the upscale places she had spent the last year visiting on other people's tabs. She started following accounts on Instagram that showed women living at what she imagined was the next level: yachts, international brunches, men in tailored suits opening car doors. She studied these images the way a student studies before an exam, not for entertainment, for instruction. She did not examine what she was being instructed to want or whether the wanting was good for her. That same month, she met Isaiah Brooks. He was the kind of man who made women straighten their backs without realizing it. Tall, dark-skinned, clean-cut, with a lean, muscular frame that suggested discipline rather than vanity, the body of someone who worked out because it organized his mind, not because he wanted to be admired. He wore simple clothes that fit well. His beard was precise without being fussy. His voice was calm, not performed calm, not the strategic calm of a man who had decided quietness was attractive. Real calm, the kind that came from a man who had already answered enough questions about himself that he no longer needed to prove anything every 5 minutes. He worked in private wealth management. He mentioned this early and then left it alone, which was itself a signal to Jennifer, who had become attuned to the way men talked about money. The ones who had it rarely brought it up unprovoked, while the ones who wanted to seem like they had it could not stop circling back. Isaiah mentioned it once, answered her follow-up question directly, and then moved the conversation somewhere more interesting. His watch was elegant without screaming for attention. A Jaeger LeCoultre on a leather strap, classic and understated. His car, when he picked her up, was a dark navy Mercedes, clean, current model, no aftermarket additions, no rims selected to announce themselves. Everything about his presentation was calibrated towards sufficiency rather than display. His manners were smooth but natural. He listened when Jennifer spoke, and unlike most of the men she had cycled through over the past year, he did not seem dazzled simply because she was beautiful. He noticed her beauty. Any man with working eyes would, and Isaiah had working eyes, but he seemed to be looking for something behind it, something he was not yet sure was there. That unsettled her. Jennifer was accustomed to being the one doing the assessing. She selected, accepted, or dismissed. She was not accustomed to feeling like the candidate rather than the judge. With Isaiah, she felt, for the first time in a long while, that something was being evaluated, and that she might not pass. Their first date was at a rooftop restaurant downtown. The skyline glowed in the early October evening. The plates were small and expensive in the way of restaurants that understood restraint, and Jennifer felt that familiar thrill of having secured exactly the kind of evening she wanted. She ordered with confidence, appetizer, entree, a cocktail she had already scoped from the online menu. He paid without hesitation, without ceremony, without glancing at the total. They talked for 2 hours about things Jennifer rarely talked about. What she actually thought about where she was going in life, what her brother's struggles meant to her, what she missed about the years before she had become so deliberately self-sufficient. She caught herself saying things she had not planned to say. For the first time in over a year, Jennifer wanted a second date for a reason other than the meal. On the second date, he took her to a jazz bar with excellent food, a 6-piece band, and low amber lighting that made everything look like a photograph of something worth remembering. On the third, a Sunday brunch spot with white tablecloths, unhurried service, and the kind of food that reminded Jennifer of her grandmother's table, technically elevated, spiritually familiar. He opened doors. He asked thoughtful questions and remembered the answers the next time they spoke. When she mentioned offhand that she had pulled a muscle moving packages, he texted her a day later to ask if she was feeling better. No man had done that in years. He was masculine without being theatrical. He had opinions and expressed them without needing her to agree. He was successful without performing it. He was attentive without being desperate, which was the rarest combination Jennifer had encountered. Most men who wanted her badly showed it in ways that made her feel powerful rather than valued, and she had learned to mistake power for affection. With Isaiah, the dynamic was different in a way she could not quite name. He made her feel seen but not captured, appreciated but not owed. Jennifer began to imagine things. Weekend trips, a kitchen they cooked in together, engagement photos somewhere with good natural light. Her finally being chosen, really chosen, not just temporarily selected, by a man that other women wanted and could not have. The end of financial scraping and ramen eaten over the sink. the beginning of the life she had always felt was rightfully hers, deferred only by circumstance. She told Kezia, "This one is different." Kezia, who had watched Jennifer disappear on 11 men in 14 months, did not say what she was thinking. She just nodded and said, "Then be different with him." Jennifer did not ask what she meant. Isaiah Brooks had not arrived at his position in life by being easily fooled. He had grown up in a working-class household in southeast Atlanta, the son of a postal worker father and a school administrator mother who had both operated on the principle that character was built in the small moments, not the large ones. He had studied finance at Morehouse on a partial scholarship, worked summers in a mailroom, graduated into a back office role at a wealth management firm, and spent the next decade earning his way into a position he now occupied with quiet confidence. He had learned to read people the way he read prospectuses, not for what they advertised, but for what the footnotes revealed. He noticed with Jennifer that she spoke about previous dates the way a person spoke about service providers, in terms of what had been delivered and whether it met expectations, never in terms of whether anyone had been genuinely treated well. He noticed she never asked what he liked, only what he did. He noticed she laughed most easily when the conversation brushed money, restaurants, travel, status, not ideas, not values, not the texture of an ordinary day. He noticed she could describe in perfect detail the ambiance and menu of high-end restaurants across the city, but seemed strangely uninterested in the qualities that sustain a peaceful home. She spoke of the life she deserved frequently, and Isaiah found himself wondering what she imagined she had done to deserve it, and whether deserving and earning had become confused in her mind. He liked her. He liked her laugh when it was genuine, which it sometimes was. He liked her intelligence, which was real and underused. He liked her strength, the physical toughness of a woman who worked hard with her body and was not ashamed of it. He liked the glimpse, occasionally, of someone softer beneath the polished surface, a Jennifer who was scared and trying rather than posed and calculating. But he was watching. And then, one evening at the gym, information found him the way information tends to find people who are paying attention. He ran into a woman named Patrice on the elliptical. She had gone to school with someone who knew Jennifer's cousin, one of those Atlanta connections that folded back on themselves in unpredictable ways. Patrice did not mean harm. She was talking casually, laughing about the absurdities of modern dating culture, when she said, "Jennifer Carter? Oh, she's gorgeous, but she's got half the city buying her dinner. That girl's been on a year-long dinner plan." Patrice meant it as gossip, the kind people share without thinking of consequences. Isaiah heard it as confirmation of what he had already begun to suspect. He did not confront Jennifer. He watched, and once he had heard it named plainly, he could see the whole architecture more clearly. The studied helplessness when the check arrived, the way gratitude rarely rose above the level of performance, the small contempt, almost unconscious, almost kind, in how she spoke of men who were ordinary and trying their best, as though ordinariness were a moral failure. The complete absence of any instinct to pour back into someone else. He had known women like Jennifer before. He had even, in his 20s, been attracted to them in the way young men are sometimes attracted to difficulty, mistaking unavailability for value. He was no longer young in that way. He invited her out one more time. Jennifer arrived radiant. She had spent 3 hours preparing, which was longer than usual, and she would not have admitted this to anyone. She had chosen the dress carefully, black again, but a different cut, soft and fitted, elegant without being obvious. She had done her hair herself, which she was good at, the coils set and pinned in a way that framed her face beautifully. She wore the pearl earrings her grandmother had given her, which she saved for occasions she considered important. She had told herself this was the night something shifted. She felt it. She had even, while standing in front of the bathroom mirror, allowed herself a full minute of imagining what it would be like to stop running the system, to not need it, because one person had chosen her completely and permanently. Isaiah took her to one of the finest restaurants in the city. She recognized it immediately as a place designed to create occasions rather than simply host them. Candlelight, crisp white linen, a pianist in the far corner playing something old and soft, the kind of maitre d' who remembered names. Monogrammed menus. Jennifer took that as a sign. She imagined this was the night everything turned. Dinner went beautifully. He was everything he had been across the previous 3 dates. Attentive, curious, warm in a measured way. She felt herself relaxing in a way she rarely did on dates, allowing more to show than she typically permitted. She talked about her mother, about the years when money was worse than it was now, about what she had felt when she first got the dispatch promotion, a pride that surprised her with its intensity. Isaiah listened to all of it. Then, after the main course had been cleared and dessert menus placed, Isaiah leaned back in his chair, folded his hands on the table and said, "Can I ask you something honestly?" Jennifer smiled with the confidence of a woman who expected to be told she was remarkable. "Sure. What do you think a woman owes a man she wants to build with?" The question irritated her immediately, though she hid it beneath the smile. The word owes felt aggressive, transactional. She had always been the one who decided what transactions looked like. "Owes?" she said, with just the right amount of arch. "That's an interesting word." He nodded. "Then let me rephrase. What does she give?" Jennifer thought about this for a moment, or appeared to. Her presence, her support, her femininity, her peace. He studied her face. And what does that look like in action? She felt suddenly examined, the way she had not felt since job interviews when she was younger. It depends on the relationship. He let a beat pass, not dramatically, just honestly. "I think you've gotten very used to receiving without giving." The words landed cleanly, without cruelty. That made them worse. Cruelty could be dismissed. Cruelty could be answered with cruelty. This was something else, the tone of a man stating a fact he had arrived at carefully, not angrily. Her smile stiffened. "Excuse me? I don't mind providing," he said. "I actually enjoy it when it means something. But provision means something different when it's received by someone with gratitude, with reciprocity. Not matching dollar for dollar. That's not what I mean. I mean care, thoughtfulness, the willingness to sometimes sacrifice your comfort for someone else's." He paused. "I haven't seen that from you." Jennifer felt heat rise through her chest into her throat. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he said quietly, "enough to know that I would never trust my life to a woman who sees people primarily as utility." That sentence, it hit harder than anything else because it named something she had never said aloud, even to herself, especially to herself. She tried to recover. "So what? You think because a woman lets a man take her to dinner she's using him?" "No," Isaiah said. "I think a woman who is always measuring what she can get and never asking what she can build is using him, and eventually she runs out of people willing to be used." She looked away. Around them the restaurant continued as though nothing had happened. Glasses caught candlelight. The pianist moved from one song into another without pause. A couple nearby laughed at something private and warm. A server moved past with practiced elegance, depositing a small plate of complimentary petite fours that Jennifer did not touch. For the first time in years, she felt cheap in a place designed to make people feel important. Isaiah paid, of course. He remained courteous throughout the rest of the meal. He did not belabor the point, did not add to the wound he had opened. He was considerate and composed in the way of a man who said what needed to be said and then let it be. He walked her to her car, opened the door, and waited until she was seated. She tried to make her voice light. "So, I'll hear from you?" He paused with his hand on the car door, not unkindly, and said, I genuinely hope you become the kind of woman who can keep a good man when he comes. I mean that sincerely. But it won't be me." Then he closed her door gently and walked away. Jennifer sat in the parking lot for 11 minutes before she could drive. She cried that night. Not immediately. First, she drove home with the radio loud and the windows cracked despite the October cold, replaying every word of the dinner in a rising loop of indignation. She called Kezia from her car. "He had the nerve to sit there and lecture me," she said, "after 3 dates, like he knows my whole story, like he knows what I've been through." Kezia was quiet for a moment. "What did he say exactly?" Jennifer recounted it. Another silence. Then Kezia said very carefully, "I mean, is any of it untrue?" Jennifer hung up. She cried after that, alone in her apartment, sitting on the edge of her bed in the good dress she had spent 3 hours choosing. The crying felt wrong. She hadn't cried over a man in years, and she resented Isaiah for being the reason she was starting now. She told herself he was arrogant, judgmental, too full of himself to recognize a good woman when he was sitting across from one. By morning, she had converted the grief into contempt, which was much more comfortable. She opened the apps again. A man named Clifton took her to a wine bar the following Friday. A man named Derek offered dinner at a nice hotel restaurant the Friday after that. The system resumed, but something was different now. Something had been said that could not be unsaid, even when ignored. Jennifer found herself, on dates, occasionally pausing mid-meal and hearing Isaiah's voice. A woman who was always measuring what she can get and never asking what she can build. She pushed the voice away each time, but it did not stop coming. Her income rose. By the time she was 30, she had moved into a full supervisory role at the distribution center, warehouse operations manager, a title that felt good to say, even when the job itself was exhausting and thankless. By 32, she had moved into a corporate training position that kept her off the floor entirely and put her in front of new hires with a headset and a slide deck. By 34, she was making more money than she had ever imagined making at 28. She moved into a nicer apartment, a 2-bedroom in a complex with a pool and covered parking. She bought a used BMW, 3 years old, thoroughly inspected, that she kept immaculate. She stopped shopping at discount stores and learned, slowly, to buy fewer things but better ones. The grocery store anxiety faded. The panic at the gas pump faded. The sweaty palm feeling before checking her bank account faded.